Two F-22 Raptors screamed through the clouds, weapons locked on an unidentified aircraft breaching secure airspace above the USS Gerald R. Ford. The carrier strike group was on high alert. This was no drill. Captain Caldwell's finger hovered over the trigger, ready to unleash hellfire on the intruder. Then it happened. A single transmission crackled through his headset, a call sign that made his blood run cold. A call sign that belonged to a ghost, a legend who vanished 5 years ago during a classified mission. Now, she was back, and nothing would ever be the same. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story intrigues you, please consider subscribing to hear more untold tales of extraordinary courage and sacrifice. The full story awaits. Lieutenant Zephyr Adler hunched over her console in the dimly lit Combat Information Center of the USS Gerald R. Ford, her eyes straining at anomalous readings flickering across her screen. Around her, the CIC hummed with the controlled chaos of a carrier strike group on high alert. Officers moved with practiced efficiency between stations, their voices maintaining the professional calm that belied the tension hanging in the recycled air. "Lieutenant, report," Commander Avery Blackwood demanded, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had seen too much combat. The scars along her jawline, remnants of an operation no one discussed, caught the blue light of the displays. "Something's out there, Commander," Adler said, tucking a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. "Pattern doesn't match any known signature." She adjusted her display, enhancing a barely perceptible blip. "It's moving between our sensor sweeps." Blackwood frowned, leaning closer to study the screen. "Specifics, Lieutenant. That's just it. I can't give you specifics. It's like it knows our scan patterns." Adler's fingers flew across her keyboard, trying different signal processing algorithms. "Permission to adjust our electronic surveillance grid?" Before Blackwood could respond, Admiral Thaddeus Winthrop strode into the CIC, his weathered face a map of 3 decades at sea. Silver hair cropped close to his scalp, uniform impeccable despite the late hour, he commanded attention without effort. "Denied, Lieutenant. We're maintaining Protocol Alpha," the Admiral stated firmly. "Intelligence suggests electronic warfare activity in the region." Adler bit her tongue, fighting the urge to argue. It was the 3rd time this week her recommendations had been dismissed. Her last performance review still stung. Lieutenant Adler demonstrates exceptional pattern recognition, but exhibits excessive caution and theoretical concerns that impact operational efficiency. The Admiral addressed the room. "We're operating in contested waters. Chinese carrier Liaoning is 70 nautical miles northeast. Russian intelligence vessel 30 miles west. I want all systems at maximum readiness." Officers acknowledged the orders with crisp, "Aye, sir" responses, but Adler remained focused on her screen. Something wasn't right. The pattern was too deliberate, too precise, as if testing their response capabilities. She isolated a frequency band, enhanced the signal, and noticed something. A ghost signal, there and gone in microseconds. She quickly applied a recursive filter to capture the ephemeral transmission when suddenly the alarms blared throughout the CIC. "Unidentified aircraft approaching from bearing 047, the radar operator announced, voice rising above the cacophony. "Speed, sir, it's hypersonic, no IFF response." Winthrop's posture stiffened. "Scramble intercept, now." The CIC erupted into coordinated activity as the air defense officer relayed the scramble order to the flight deck. Adler's concerns were forgotten in the immediate crisis, but she continued analyzing the strange signal pattern that had preceded the incursion. On the flight deck, flight crews rushed to prepare the alert fighters. Within minutes, 2 F-22 Raptors thundered down the carrier's catapult and launched into the darkening sky. Captain Novak Razorwire Caldwell banked his F-22 Raptor hard left, the G-forces pressing him into his seat as the South China Sea blurred beneath him. His wingman, Lieutenant Solon, maintained perfect formation off his starboard. "Tango 1, this is Razorwire. We are weapons hot, approaching intercept point," he reported, his voice carrying the practiced calm they taught at Top Gun. By the book. Always by the book. Razorwire had built his reputation on textbook perfection. In his helmet display, the bogey appeared, moving impossibly fast, changing altitude in patterns that should tear apart any airframe. "CIC, Razorwire. Are we sure this isn't one of ours? Movement suggests AI-assisted flight." He struggled to maintain lock on the target, which seemed to anticipate his maneuvers before he executed them. "Negative, Razor Wire," Blackwood's voice came through his headset. "All friendly aircraft accounted for. Consider target hostile." In the CIC, Adler watched the intercept with growing unease. The unidentified aircraft moved like nothing she had ever seen, its electronic signature constantly shifting. "Commander, the bogey's electronic signature is shifting. It's cycling through recognition patterns, including some I've never seen," she reported to Blackwood, who had taken position beside her station. "Meaning what, Lieutenant?" Blackwood asked, eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the F-22s converging with the unknown contact. "Meaning it's either testing our responses or," she hesitated, knowing how it would sound, "or it knows our systems better than we do." On the main display, the F-22s closed with the unidentified aircraft. Admiral Winthrop watched intently, hands clasped behind his back. "Captain Caldwell, you are cleared to engage if target performs any aggressive maneuver." "Copy that," Razor Wire responded. "Target acquired. Missile lock established." In his cockpit, Razor Wire's thumb hovered over the weapons release. The strange aircraft continued its erratic pattern, but maintained its course toward the carrier group. "Solon, maintain position, preparing to engage," he instructed his wingman. Back in the CIC, Adler suddenly froze, eyes fixed on her screen. A new signal had appeared, using an encryption protocol she recognized from her studies of naval history. "Sir, the bogey just activated an encrypted communication channel," she called out. Sir, this frequency hasn't been used in years." Before anyone could respond, a single transmission cut through the static. A woman's voice, calm but urgent. "Whisper 7. The CIC fell silent. Operators exchanged confused glances, but Adler saw recognition flash across Commander Blackwood's face. On screen, Razor Wire's F-22 suddenly broke missile lock and veered away from the intercept course. "Razor Wire, report. Why did you disengage?" Winthrop demanded, stepping closer to the communications console. Caldwell's voice came back shaken, all textbook confidence gone. "Sir, that call sign. Request immediate stand down. I know who this is." "Explain yourself, Captain." The Admiral's voice was sharp. "Sir, that's Commander Octavia Frost's call sign, Whisper 7. The name rippled through the CIC. Officers exchanged glances. Blackwood dropped the tablet she was holding with a clatter. "That's impossible," Winthrop whispered. "Frost has been dead for 5 years." Adler watched as Commander Blackwood's face drained of color. She had heard the name before, of course. Commander Octavia Frost was legendary at the Naval Academy, her exploits studied in tactical courses. The pilot who had rewritten aerial combat doctrine. The officer who had saved a destroyer and its crew by landing a critically damaged fighter on its deck during the Taiwan Strait crisis. The officer who had disappeared 5 years ago during a classified mission and was presumed dead. "Sir," Blackwood spoke, her voice uncharacteristically unsteady. "Request permission to verify identity." The Admiral nodded, still processing the implications. "Proceed." Blackwood leaned toward the comm system. "Unidentified aircraft, this is Commander Blackwood. Authentication protocol Sierra Echo 39er. The tense silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity. Then the woman's voice returned. "Authentication response, Twilight Archer 712. Hello, Avery. It's been a while." Blackwood gripped the console edge, knuckles white. "Octavia? Requesting emergency landing clearance. Aircraft fuel critical. Will explain upon arrival." Admiral Winthrop stepped forward. "Unidentified aircraft, this is Admiral Winthrop. While we verify your identity, maintain current heading. Do not deviate or you will be engaged." "Understood, Admiral. Maintaining course." Winthrop turned to his staff. "I want full defensive posture maintained. This could be an elaborate deception." To Blackwood, he added quietly, "Is it really her?" Blackwood's expression was complex. "The authentication codes are correct, sir, and that's her voice. But how?" "Lieutenant Adler," Winthrop called. "Analysis of the aircraft?" Adler pulled up the sensor data. "Sir, it doesn't match any known configuration. Radar cross-section is minimal. Heat signature suggests propulsion technology beyond current capabilities. If I had to guess, it's at least 20 years ahead of our most advanced prototypes." "Chinese? Russian?" "No, sir. It's nothing like their known development paths either. This is something else entirely." Winthrop made his decision. "Clear the flight deck for emergency landing. Security teams in position. I want medical and intelligence personnel standing by." He turned to Blackwood. "Commander, you'll accompany me to the flight deck." "Yes, sir." Blackwood straightened her uniform, struggling to regain her professional composure. "Lieutenant Adler, you too. Your eyes might see something others miss." Adler blinked in surprise but quickly gathered her tablet. "Yes, sir." As they moved toward the exit, Winthrop added, "And Blackwood, I know she was your friend, but remember, Commander Frost has been missing for 5 years. Whatever comes out of that aircraft may look like her, sound like her, but until we confirm otherwise, it is not her. Understood?" Blackwood nodded stiffly. "Understood, Admiral." The flight deck crew scrambled to prepare for the incoming aircraft. The F-22s maintained escort position, flanking the mysterious craft as it approached the carrier. On the deck, security teams took positions, weapons at ready. Medical personnel waited nearby with scanning equipment. Intelligence officers prepared to document every detail of the arrival. Admiral Winthrop, Commander Blackwood, and Lieutenant Adler emerged onto the flight deck, the wind whipping at their uniforms. In the distance, they could see the approaching aircraft, its silhouette unlike anything in their inventory. "My God," Winthrop muttered as the aircraft drew closer. "What is that thing?" The unknown aircraft slowed as it neared the carrier, hovering impossibly without visible rotors or conventional thrust vectors. Its hull was sleek, angular, with no visible engine ports. Its metallic surface seemed to absorb rather than reflect sunlight, giving it a ghost-like appearance against the evening sky. With precision that defied conventional aerodynamics, it descended toward the designated landing area. The deck crew stood transfixed as it touched down with barely a sound, settling on the carrier's deck as if it weighed nothing at all. For several long moments, nothing happened. The aircraft sat motionless, its systems powered down, canopy still sealed. Security teams maintained their positions, weapons trained on the craft. Then, with a hydraulic hiss, audible even over the constant wind of the open sea, the canopy began to slide open. Admiral Winthrop stepped forward, breaking all protocol by personally approaching the aircraft. Commander Blackwood followed a few paces behind, her face a mask of professional control betrayed only by the slight tremor in her hands. A figure emerged from the cockpit, a woman, tall and athletic despite her years. Her once regulation blonde hair now streaked with silver, her face weathered by sun and marked by a scar running from temple to jaw. But the eyes, piercing blue eyes that stared down from countless Academy portraits, were unmistakable. Commander Octavia Frost. "Permission to come aboard, Admiral," she said, her voice steady despite the dozen weapons trained on her. Winthrop's face cycled through shock, disbelief, and something else, something Adler couldn't quite identify. Fear? Awe? "Granted," he managed finally. As Frost descended from the aircraft, Blackwood stepped forward, color drained from her face. "Octavia?" Frost's composure cracked for just a moment, a flash of emotion crossing her features before the disciplined mask returned. "Avery, you made commander. Good." Blackwood's hand trembled slightly as she struggled for words. "They told us you were gone. The search. We looked for months." "I was gone," Frost replied simply. Then to Winthrop, "Sir, we need to talk. Immediately. What I have to report cannot wait." The Admiral studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Security, escort Commander Frost to medical for verification. Once cleared, bring her to my briefing room." He turned to Adler. "Lieutenant, I want everything you can tell me about that aircraft. Every reading, every anomaly. Priority 1. "Yes, sir," Adler responded, already moving toward the mysterious craft, her mind racing with questions. As security led Frost away, she locked eyes briefly with Adler. Something in that gaze, a recognition or assessment, made Adler shiver despite the warm evening air. Whatever Commander Octavia Frost had brought back with her, Adler sensed it would change everything. In the secure briefing room, Commander Octavia Frost stood before the ship's senior officers. The medical officer had just confirmed her identity through DNA and retinal scans, leaving the assembled leadership struggling to reconcile the woman before them with the legend they had mourned 5 years ago. "Report, Commander," Admiral Winthrop instructed, his voice carefully neutral despite the extraordinary circumstances. Frost straightened, slipping effortlessly into the formal bearing of a senior officer delivering intelligence. "I was shot down during reconnaissance over the Taiwan Strait, as you know," she began. What you don't know is that I wasn't killed. I was captured and taken to a research facility in the mainland's Northwest Territory. For 5 years? Winthrop asked incredulously, voicing what everyone was thinking. They were interested in what I knew, and later, in what I could fly. Frost's eyes hardened with memory. 3 weeks ago, I escaped with that aircraft and critical intelligence. Commander Blackwood, seated to Winthrop's right, leaned forward. Octavia, the official report states your aircraft was hit by surface-to-air fire. We recovered debris consistent with catastrophic failure. Debris was planted. The SAM detonated, but not close enough for a kill. I was forced into their airspace, fuel systems compromised. When I attempted emergency landing, I was surrounded and captured. Frost's delivery was clinical, detached, as if describing someone else's experience. And this aircraft, Winthrop pressed, you're saying it's Chinese technology? Frost hesitated, choosing her words carefully. Its origins are more complicated than national boundaries, Admiral. The facility where I was held operated with a level of autonomy unusual for their military structure. Scientists from multiple countries, working under a single research directive. Lieutenant Adler, who had been granted permission to attend due to her electronic warfare expertise, studied Frost intently. Something about the commander's account didn't align with the data she had gathered from the aircraft. She noticed subtle inconsistencies others might miss. The way Frost's eyes tracked to certain equipment, her careful avoidance of specific details. Commander Frost, Adler interjected, earning surprised looks for speaking out of turn. The aircraft you arrived in broadcasts on frequencies that shouldn't exist yet. Its electronic signature shifts faster than our systems can classify. Frost turned her penetrating gaze to Adler, assessing her with the practiced eye of someone accustomed to evaluating talent. And you are? Lieutenant Zephyr Adler, Electronic Countermeasures Specialist. A slight nod of respect. You're observant, Lieutenant. That aircraft incorporates technology that renders most of our current defense systems obsolete. She turned back to Winthrop. Which is why I need to speak with you privately, Admiral. Immediately. The Admiral considered this for a moment before addressing the room. Senior staff will remain. Everyone else is dismissed. Officers filed out, leaving only Winthrop, Blackwood, the Chief of Security, and the carrier's executive officer. Adler rose to leave when Frost's voice stopped her. Lieutenant Adler should stay, Admiral. Her expertise will be relevant. Winthrop nodded, gesturing for Adler to retake her seat. Once the room was secured, Frost's demeanor subtly shifted. The rigid military bearing remained, but something else emerged, a gravity that hadn't been present before. What I'm about to tell you is classified beyond any security clearance in this room. She took a breath. The aircraft I arrived in utilizes quantum communication technology. It doesn't just evade encryption, it renders the entire concept of secure communication obsolete. Silence fell over the room as the implications sank in. Quantum communication exists, Adler said carefully, but the practical applications are limited to laboratory settings, short distances. That was true 5 years ago, Frost acknowledged. The research facility where I was held achieved a breakthrough approximately 3 years ago. They can now entangle particles across unlimited distances, instantaneously sharing information regardless of traditional barriers. The executive officer leaned forward. If that's true, every encrypted system we have is compromised. Worse, Frost continued, they can inject false signals indistinguishable from authentic communications. Imagine an order to launch coming through proper channels, with all correct authentication, that never actually originated from command. Winthrop's expression darkened. You're describing the end of assured command and control, the collapse of deterrence. Yes. And you escaped with this technology? The security chief's tone held clear skepticism. Frost met his gaze evenly. I didn't escape, Commander. I was allowed to leave. The room went still. Explain, Winthrop ordered. After years of integration into their program, they began to trust me. Or more accurately, they believed they had broken me, turned me. Her expression remained impassive. I cultivated that impression. When the prototype was ready for field testing, I was the logical pilot choice. They wanted to monitor our response capabilities. You're saying the aircraft is compromised, Blackwood concluded. Comprehensively. It's designed to appear as a technological windfall while systematically mapping our defensive capabilities and establishing backdoor access to our systems. Adler processed this against her own observations. The shifting electronic signature. It's not defensive, it's exploratory. Exactly, Frost confirmed. Every moment that aircraft remains powered, it's gathering data. Then why bring it here at all? The executive officer demanded. Why not destroy it once you were clear? Because we need it, Frost replied simply. The technology is real, even if compromised. Without understanding it, we have no hope of developing countermeasures. Winthrop stood abruptly, moving to the communications panel. He activated the ship-wide system. This is the Admiral. Implement EMCON Delta. Disconnect all systems from external networks. This is not a drill. Acknowledge. Acknowledgements filtered in from across the carrier as departments executed the emergency communications lockdown protocol. Turning back to Frost, Winthrop's expression was grim. You've placed this ship and potentially the entire fleet at risk, Commander. With respect, sir, the risk existed whether I returned or not. At least now we have warning. If what you're saying is true, the security chief interjected, your reappearance will alert them that their plan is compromised. They expected that possibility, Frost countered. Part of their calculus was determining how quickly we would identify the threat. My appearance creates a convenient focal point for suspicion while the real infiltration may come from elsewhere. Winthrop studied her for a long moment. I need to contact Fleet Command. In the meantime, Commander Frost is restricted to quarters under guard. The aircraft is to be powered down completely and isolated. As the meeting dispersed, Adler found herself walking alongside Blackwood in the corridor. You've known Commander Frost a long time? She asked. Blackwood's expression softened briefly. We were in flight school together, roommates. She was best pilot in our class, probably in a generation. She paused. After she disappeared, I led 3 of the search missions myself. We found debris, flight recorder fragments, enough to confirm loss. Her eyes hardened. Or so we thought. You believe her story? I believe it's Octavia. The rest, I don't know. 5 years is a long time. People change. Priorities shift. Commander, Adler hesitated. Her account of the aircraft's capabilities matches what I observed, but some of the details about her captivity seem inconsistent. Blackwood stopped walking. What kind of inconsistencies? She describes being a prisoner, but shows no physiological markers consistent with long-term captivity. Her muscle tone, skin condition, even her posture suggests someone who's maintained peak physical condition. Noted, Lieutenant. Keep those observations to yourself for now. 3 hours later, Adler was summoned to Admiral Winthrop's quarters. When she arrived, she found the Admiral, Commander Blackwood, and to her surprise, Commander Frost, who had apparently been released from restriction. Lieutenant, Winthrop gestured to a chair. What's discussed in this room goes no further. Understood? Yes, sir. Frost studied her with those penetrating blue eyes. Lieutenant Adler, I understand you've been passed over for promotion twice. Adler stiffened, wondering how Frost had accessed her service record. Yes, Commander. Excessive caution, they said. A knowing smile touched Frost's lips. Tell me what you noticed about my arrival that bothered you. Adler hesitated, aware that her observations could be seen as accusations. With 3 senior officers watching, the pressure to choose her words carefully was immense. Your aircraft uses communication protocols that shift faster than anything we have, yet it's seamlessly interfaced with our systems, she began cautiously. You knew exactly which frequency would get attention. And, she paused, gathering courage, your physical condition doesn't match your story. Explain, Frost prompted, showing no offense. Your hands show no signs of restraint marks for someone who was supposedly a prisoner for 5 years. Your muscle tone suggests regular exercise, and you've been watching the electronic warfare station more than any other position, suggesting specific interest in our countermeasure capabilities. Instead of anger, Frost exchanged a meaningful look with Winthrop, who nodded almost imperceptibly. I wasn't captured, Lieutenant, Frost admitted. I was sent deep cover, a mission so classified only 2 people knew I was alive. Adler blinked, processing this revelation. Admiral Winthrop and? The previous CNO, now retired. Everyone else believed exactly what they were meant to, that Commander Octavia Frost died heroically in the line of duty. The prototype aircraft contains quantum communication technology, Frost continued, moving to a secure terminal. It doesn't just break encryption, it makes the concept of encryption obsolete. I was sent to confirm its existence and assess the threat level. And did you? Adler asked. Yes, but they discovered me 3 months ago. The aircraft I liberated, she chose the word carefully, is real, but it's been compromised. I was allowed to escape with it. Understanding dawned on Adler's face. A Trojan horse. Frost nodded. The moment we fully integrate it with our systems, they gain access to everything. They're counting on our eagerness to understand and reverse engineer the technology. Why come back at all then? Adler asked, the logical question forming immediately. Why not destroy it? Because we need the technology, Blackwood interjected. If we don't develop countermeasures now, we lose the next war before it begins, Frost finished. I came back knowing what would happen. Suspicion, possibly court-martial, because we need to understand this technology. Admiral Winthrop stood, hands clasped behind his back as he regarded Adler. Lieutenant Adler, your caution and pattern recognition skills are exactly what we need now. I'm appointing you to head a new electronic countermeasures initiative, effective immediately. Adler blinked in surprise. Sir? Frost spoke highly of your observations. You saw what everyone else missed. That's the difference between defeat and survival. There's more, Frost added, her expression grave. The aircraft isn't the only vector for this technology. They've been developing implementation through multiple channels, some likely already active in our systems. Which is why we're creating a special task force, Winthrop explained, operating outside normal chains of command. Commander Frost will provide technical details of what she's observed. You'll develop countermeasures. What about the security risks? If the aircraft is compromised, Adler began. We've created an isolated environment in the auxiliary hangar bay, Blackwood explained. No network connections, minimal power, every signal in or out monitored. Your team will have exclusive access. Adler nodded, mind already racing with methodologies and testing protocols. When do we start? Now, Frost answered. They're likely already tracking the aircraft's position and status. Every minute counts. As they moved to exit, Admiral Winthrop placed a hand on Adler's shoulder. Lieutenant, your promotion to Lieutenant Commander is effective immediately. The paperwork will catch up eventually. Thank you, sir, Adler replied, still processing the rapid turn of events. In the corridor, Frost fell into step beside her. Your record noted you have an unusual approach to signal analysis, something about pattern recognition in seemingly random noise. My doctoral thesis at MIT, Adler confirmed. Statistical analysis of signal degradation in hostile electronic environments. Frost nodded approvingly. That's exactly the perspective we need. The quantum communication system generates what appears to be random noise as cover for its actual transmissions. Like hiding a signal within signal scatter, Adler mused. Clever. Very. And nearly impossible to detect unless you know exactly what to look for. They reached the elevator that would take them to the auxiliary hangar bay. Before entering, Frost paused, fixing Adler with an intense gaze. Lieutenant Commander, there's something else you should know. This technology, in the wrong hands, doesn't just threaten military communications. It undermines the entire concept of secure information. Banking, power grids, air traffic control, everything. Global infrastructure collapse, Adler realized. Precisely. Which is why what we do in the next 48 hours may be the most important work of our lives. The elevator doors opened, revealing a team of specialists already assembling in the corridor beyond, handpicked by Winthrop for their expertise and discretion. Ready? Frost asked. Adler squared her shoulders. Ready, Commander. 1 month later, the USS Gerald R. Ford sailed through calmer waters of the Western Pacific. The carrier group maintained its vigilant patrol, but the acute tension that had characterized the days following Commander Frost's dramatic return had evolved into a focused readiness. On Deck 3, in what had been officially designated as Advanced Electronic Countermeasures Division, but was unofficially known throughout the ship as the Phantom Chamber, Lieutenant Commander Zephyr Adler reviewed the latest simulation results on her display. The quantum firewall held through all 17 attack vectors, reported Ensign Farrow, one of the bright young specialists assigned to Adler's team. Even the nested protocol breaches were contained and redirected. Adler nodded, studying the data streams. The past month had been the most intense of her career, working directly with Commander Frost to understand and counter the quantum communication technology. Progress had been remarkable, though not without setbacks. Twice they'd thought they'd developed effective countermeasures, only to have Frost identify vulnerabilities they hadn't considered. Run it again with randomized entry points, Adler instructed, and increase the complexity factor by 20%. If it passes that, we'll take it to Commander Frost for review. The door to the lab slid open, and Commander Frost herself entered, now wearing standard naval aviation uniform with her wings and rank insignia restored. After intense debriefing and vetting by naval intelligence, she had been officially reinstated to active duty, though her exact status remained highly classified. "How's it coming, Commander?" Frost asked, the corner of her mouth lifting slightly at using Adler's new rank. Adler looked up from her station, still adjusting to being addressed as Commander rather than Lieutenant. "We've isolated the backdoor protocols completely. They're elegant, would have been undetectable if we weren't specifically looking for them." "And the countermeasures?" "We've developed a shifting firewall system based on your aircraft's own technology. Initial tests are promising." Adler gestured to the simulation running on the auxiliary display. "The quantum entanglement properties that make the original technology so dangerous also make it predictable if you know exactly what parameters to monitor. We're using that against them." Frost moved closer to study the display, her expression revealing nothing of her thoughts. "Impressive work, but will it hold against an actual attack?" "Though we won't know for sure until," Adler began. The ship-wide alert system suddenly activated, cutting off her words. "Electronic warfare attack detected. All stations implement Phantom Protocol. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Frost and Adler exchanged glances. "Sooner than we expected," Frost said, already moving toward the exit. They rushed to the CIC, where Admiral Winthrop stood calmly at the center of controlled chaos, officers moving with practiced efficiency between stations. "Report," Winthrop ordered as they entered. Commander Blackwood looked up from the tactical display. "Multiple electronic intrusion attempts detected across all communication bands. Pattern matches the quantum signature we were briefed to expect. Phantom Protocol was implemented within 30 seconds of initial detection. Status of fleet communications? Degraded but functional on backup systems. The isolated quantum firewall is holding." On the main display, they could see the carrier group's defensive posture activated. Missile defense systems were at full readiness, aircraft were being scrambled, and electronic countermeasures blazed across the electromagnetic spectrum. "Origin point?" Frost asked, moving to stand beside Winthrop. "Difficult to pinpoint," the electronic warfare officer replied. "Signal appears to be coming from multiple directions simultaneously." "That's by design," Adler interjected, studying the signal pattern. "They're using quantum entanglement to broadcast from distributed nodes, but there's always a primary source." She moved to an auxiliary console, fingers flying across the interface. "Permission to implement tracking protocol Sierra 9? "Granted," Winthrop confirmed. Adler activated the specialized tracking system they had developed specifically for this scenario. The display shifted, showing a three-dimensional representation of the signal sources. Most appeared as red nodes scattered across a wide area, but one pulsed with greater intensity. "There," she pointed. "Bearing 047, approximately 120 miles. Signal strength suggests a specialized platform, possibly a modified surveillance vessel." "That's inside the Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone," Blackwood noted, "outside of declared exercise areas." "Sir," the tactical officer called out, "we're detecting incoming aircraft from the same bearing. Fast movers, no identification transponders." Winthrop's expression hardened. "Scramble alert fighters, weapons tight but ready, and get me a direct line to 7th Fleet Command." As officers carried out the orders, the electronic warfare officer reported, "Sir, attack vectors changing. They're probing for weaknesses in our quantum firewall." "Hold the line," Adler instructed her team over the tactical network. "Implement adaptive response patterns as briefed." Minutes passed in tense concentration as the invisible electronic battle raged across the spectrum. Then, suddenly, the incoming signals shifted pattern dramatically. "They're pulling back," the EW officer announced with surprise. "Signal strength dropping across all bands." "The aircraft?" Winthrop asked. "Turning away, sir, heading back to point of origin." A cautious relief spread through the CIC, though no one relaxed their vigilance. "It worked," Blackwood stated, looking at Adler and Frost. "Your countermeasures actually worked." "For now," Frost cautioned. "They'll analyze what happened, adapt, try again. But we'll be ready," Adler added with quiet confidence. "And we'll keep adapting too." Winthrop turned to face them. "Excellent work, both of you. Commander Adler, I want a full analysis of their attack vectors and our response effectiveness. Commander Frost, we need to brief Fleet Command immediately on what just happened." "Yes, sir," they responded in unison. Later, as dawn broke over the carrier, Frost and Adler stood on the observation deck, watching F-22s launch for morning patrol. Below them, deck crews painted Whisper 7 onto the side of a new aircraft, a modified F-35 incorporating elements of the quantum technology that had been safely extracted and repurposed. "The Joint Chiefs want to give you a public commendation," Frost told Adler, hands resting on the railing. "I told them you'd hate that." Adler smiled. "You were right. Your countermeasure design was brilliant, using their own quantum principles against them, creating a system that appears vulnerable but actually traces back any intrusion attempt to its source." Frost shook her head slightly. "Even I wouldn't have thought of that approach." "It was your insights that made it possible," Adler replied. "Without your first-hand knowledge of their systems, we'd still be trying to understand the basic principles." They fell silent for a moment, watching the aircraft patrol the skies above them, contrails crisp against the morning blue. "They tried to use me to destroy everything I loved," Frost said finally, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Instead, they gave us the tools to save it." "How do you do it?" Adler asked after a moment of contemplation. "Walk back into the world after everyone thought you were dead?" Frost's gaze remained on the horizon, where the rising sun painted the sky in shades of promise. "One step at a time, Commander. The hardest part isn't coming back, it's making sure there's something worth coming back to." She turned to face Adler fully. "That's why what we did matters. Not just the technology or the immediate threat, but what it represents. Every generation faces its own version of this challenge, a turning point where the future could go one way or another. And you think we've turned it the right way?" "For now," Frost acknowledged. "But the work continues. They'll be back with something new, something we haven't anticipated yet." "And we'll be ready," Adler stated with conviction. "Because of people like you," Frost noted. "People who see patterns others miss, who question what everyone else accepts." The ship's intercom activated. "Commander Frost and Commander Adler report to Admiral's briefing room." As they turned to leave, Frost added quietly, "Some legends never die, Zephyr. Some weren't meant to." Adler glanced back at the aircraft on the deck, the name Whisper 7 now glistening in fresh paint on its fuselage. "And some new ones are just beginning." In the Admiral's briefing room, they found Winthrop and Blackwood reviewing reports from the electronic attack. "Fleet Command is impressed," Winthrop informed them as they entered. "The countermeasure system performed beyond expectations. They want it implemented across the fleet immediately." "We'll need to train specialized teams for each vessel," Adler noted. "The system requires constant monitoring and adaptation." "Already being arranged," Blackwood confirmed. "Top graduates from the Electronic Warfare School are being diverted to the program. They're calling it the Phantom Initiative." Winthrop activated the secure display. "There's something else. Intelligence has identified the vessel that launched the attack." An image appeared of a nondescript research ship, officially registered as an oceanographic survey vessel, but clearly modified for electronic warfare operations. "I recognize it," Frost said, studying the image. "It was docked at the facility where I was stationed. They called it the Harbinger." "Well, the Harbinger is now being closely monitored by our submarines," Winthrop continued. "But more importantly, its presence confirms your intelligence about their deployment timeline. They're moving faster than anticipated." "Which means what exactly?" Adler asked. "It means," Frost answered, "that this was just a test. The real attack is still coming." "Based on Commander Frost's intelligence and what we observed today," Winthrop elaborated, "we believe they're planning a coordinated electronic assault on multiple targets, military and civilian infrastructure, within the next 30 days. A quantum Pearl Harbor," Blackwood added grimly. "Which is why," Winthrop continued, "I've received authorization to expand your team into a full task force. Commander Adler, You'll be promoted to full commander and given operational control of the Electronic Countermeasures Division. Commander Frost will head tactical applications, developing ways to use the quantum technology offensively if necessary. Adler blinked in surprise at the rapid advancement. Thank you, sir, but I've only been a lieutenant commander for a month. And in that month, you've accomplished more than most officers do in years, Winthrop replied firmly. The situation demands exceptional measures. There's something else, Frost interjected, exchanging a glance with the Admiral. The attack pattern we observed today had certain signatures that shouldn't have been possible without inside knowledge of our systems. You think we have a security breach? Adler asked. I think we need to consider the possibility, Frost confirmed, which is why all further development will take place in compartmentalized teams, need-to-know basis only. The implications settled heavily in the room. The idea that someone within their own ranks might be compromised added another layer of complexity to an already daunting challenge. We'll need to develop communication protocols that are secure even from quantum intrusion, Adler mused, mind already working on solutions. Perhaps a return to analog methods for certain critical functions. Exactly, Frost agreed. Sometimes the oldest technologies are the most secure simply because they're incompatible with modern attack vectors. I've seen your personnel recommendations, Winthrop said to Adler. They're approved. Select whoever you need for your team. Thank you, sir. As the meeting concluded and they prepared to return to their respective duties, Blackwood pulled Adler aside. When Octavia first disappeared, I led the search myself, she said quietly. For weeks we combed every inch of that stretch of ocean. I refused to believe she was gone. A small smile crossed her face. Turns out my instincts were right, just 5 years too early. She's remarkable, Adler acknowledged. The way she's readjusted after everything. That's Octavia, Blackwood replied. But don't be fooled by the composed exterior. Coming back, facing all of this, it takes a toll. She trusts you, which is rare. She sees something in you that reminds her of herself, I think. I'll keep that in mind. Do that, Blackwood nodded. Now let's get back to work. We have a world to save. 3 days later, Commander Zephyr Adler stood in the newly expanded Electronic Warfare Center, surrounded by the best minds the Navy could provide. On the wall, a digital countdown displayed the estimated window for the anticipated major attack, now 27 days away. The quantum firewall held against their test, she addressed her team, but they'll have analyzed our responses, adapted their approach. We need to stay ahead of them. Across the room, Commander Frost entered with a group of pilots, the first graduates of the Accelerated Quantum Tactics Training Program. The defensive systems are only half the equation, Frost explained to both groups. These pilots will be flying aircraft equipped with offensive quantum capabilities. Working together, we create a defense in depth that no single breakthrough can overcome. As the briefing continued, Adler caught Frost's eye across the room. A silent understanding passed between them, recognition of the journey that had brought them to this point and the challenges that still lay ahead. The ship's intercom announced upcoming flight operations, and through the reinforced windows of the command center, they could see aircraft being prepared on the flight deck, including Frost's newly designated F-35 Whisper 7, emblazoned proudly on its fuselage. Ready for the next phase, Commander? Frost asked as they stood side by side, watching the preparations below. Adler nodded with quiet determination. Ready as we'll ever be. Frost smiled, the expression reaching her eyes for perhaps the first time since her return. Then let's make history.